it's Dr. Renee, and we're here at Black Doctor once again. And in case you didn't know, November is National Adoption Month. So I am so pleased to bring to you two of my friends who have both very amazing stories, and then they came together and have created an amazing platform for adoptees and adopters, maybe and adoptees. But they'll talk more about it. But you guys, please make sure you share the broadcast, because I bet you somebody you know is adopted and you just don't know it yet. And they may not know it yet either if you listen to the stories I have for you today. And so I want you to please share the broadcast. Please share it on whatever platform you're watching. I hope you're having happy Thanksgiving, and if you celebrate. And today's Thursday anyway, so you should be thankful because it's Thankful Thursday. And I will bring my guests on now. Good evening, ladies.
Hey.
So we have Sandria Washington, who actually used to work for blackdoctor.org.
Yes.
And you used to see her up here on these lives way more than myself, even, I think. But because she was doing them all, I swear.
All the lives.
Yes, she was traveling the country and doing them all. And then she used to edit for Black Doctor. So Sandria is... And she's been, like I said, been on even after she left. So she's Sandria. Okay.
She gotta say that she been on after she left.
She won with Black Doctor, but she still came back, talking about other great things.
Yes.
So, and then Dr. Samantha Coleman, who is your audiologist, right?
No.
No?
Oh. I'm not an audiologist.
Where did I get that from?
Look, I want to be that, whatever that is.
I'm like,
I want to be it.
I know what it is, but no, I'm not that. My PhD is in organizational leadership. So
see,
there you go.
Even harder. Okay, so I'm just saying. So kudos to you. But yeah, so Dr. Samantha is amazing woman herself, and you two have two of the most amazing stories. I read about Dr. Sam's, but Sandria, one of our girl trek walks, she made me walk 100 days, 30 minutes every day.
Really, Renee? And really?
Okay. On the 100th day, she said, "Well, I'll walk with you." I said, "Well, thank God," but I'm just joking. So I was like, "Sandria, so please tell me," and she told me the story, and I was just like,
yeah,
blew me away. So we'll start with Dr. Sam, since I know Sandria's already. Go ahead. So Dr. Sam, Black to the Beginning, if you guys have seen them anywhere, that is the name of their platform that they've created, their podcast, and we will talk about that later. But what does the National Adoption Month, what does that have to do with you?
So not only is it National Adoption Month, but it is also Thanksgiving.
Amen.
And I'm sure that myself and Sandria can attest to how important Thanksgiving is to us. I only share my bit of it, but Thanksgiving is the very first time that I laid eyes on my birth mother, my birth father, and my full-blooded biological siblings. And so at this point, that was in 2016. Was it 2022? Let me see, do the math. Was that 6 years? 6 years at this point since I've, come to that particular moment. So Thanksgiving is extremely special, but also National Adoption Month, of course, is near and dear to our hearts as well. But jumping into the story, because I'm assuming that you're ready for the tea in the story, right? Story is crazy. So basically, I found out in 2006, at the age of 26, that I was adopted. My mother took me out for a lunch, stated it very casually.
Matter of fact?
Yeah, very matter of fact, very casual, as if it was not big news, right? But what's so interesting, and every time I think back on that particular situation, I also really didn't react as if it was big news. It was one of those things where Sandria and I joke, it was like, got that one little glory, tear that's like running down your face. I'm not weeping or sobbing or anything. I just took that information in, partly because I felt like I knew that something was off in terms of my placement in my family. But fast forwarding a little bit, so I find out at 26. The only person that I tell at that time is my husband. And it isn't until about 2010 that I get a little, what do you call it? Like the vehicle sticker renewal. And at the top of it, it gives this information about being able to essentially get access to your birth certificate. So it's such an obscure place to put something, but I guess maybe they thought, you would look at it, but I could
I
have
was gonna say somebody
easily
will pay attention.
somebody pay attention, right? But how do you know the right person's gonna pay attention?
Right.
So it's really one of those things. I could have easily like thrown it away, but I did not. I saw it right there at the top and decided like, okay, well, let me go ahead and try and gain access to my birth certificate. So that was in 2010. It took me about a couple years to be able to get my actual birth certificate. And the reason being is because the process actually allowed for birth parents to state whether or not they wanted that child to have access to that information. So it had to be almost like everyone was in agreement that this file would open. So no one contested it. I ended up getting my birth certificate in 2012. I had this information, immediately started, Googling and Facebooking, and Google is your friend. I'm telling you, all you have to do is like, literally, I took the address straight off of the birth certificate, typed it on in there, and the last name that was on my birth certificate came, right up. That was in 2012. So mind you, this entire time that I'm going through all of this, I'm not sharing this with anybody.
Right.
And part of the reason for that is one, I'm embarrassed, by it. I'm feeling, a bit ashamed because again, the same story that is in a lot of Black folks' head is that Black people don't adopt. So I'm thinking like, what's wrong with my family that they went on this adoption journey, because we don't even do that. And so here I am. So I'm not talking about it at all. But once I get this birth certificate, and on top of that, losing a child, having a child, like all of these little things. So I was just like, okay, it's time for me to have some conversations, with my good girlfriends. And so that was in 2016 that I actually decided that I was going to have this conversation with my friends and let them know. And this is why Thanksgiving is so important, because all of my conversations with friends led up to the point of me actually coming face to face with my birth parents and my siblings. So yeah, I mean, that is where the 2016 kind of transcends into, Sandria's story. But long story short, I spent a good decade living in late discovery adoptee world, not being transparent about what was happening with me and really just trying to cope with that information. But once I did do that, various friends had different reactions, and I'll let Sandria share hers.
Yes, this is where I pop in. It's so funny when you were telling your story, Sam, and you were just like, now, mind you, and a story is good when they say, now, mind you. So, yeah. So now, mind you, Samantha tells me in 2016 that she's adopted. Her mother had just told her, so she grew up not knowing. And so when I heard this information, it was just so unbelievable and so wild to me, because we have been friends for years. I think, Samantha and I have been friends probably as long as me and you, Renee, have been friends, since like the early 2000s.
And me and Samantha were neighbors.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You did know that.
Wait.
We lived in the high rises.
We're going to come back to that.
We have to come back.
We're going to come back to that. But needless to say, a very long time. And so, of course, in all that time that you've known me, that you've known Samantha, adoption was never part of the equation. So when she tells me this story, I'm just like, damn, that's messed up. Like, that was my first initial thought. yeah, didn't really know what to do with that information. Just like, how do you hold space for, somebody that shares that? But we get through that moment. That's 2016. Fast forward 2018 to Thanksgiving. Actually, Thanksgiving 2017. So Thanksgiving 2017, I get a message from my cousin. She sends me a message via Instagram, and I don't see it until the day after Thanksgiving. So I see it on Black Friday. I wake up, I see her message, and basically she says, "You're adopted. I don't know if you know, but I wanted to let you know that you're adopted." So that was like the first seed of me finding out that adoption is a part of my story. But I didn't really have confirmation. I didn't know if my cousin was telling the truth. I didn't know what to do with the information. So I really didn't do anything with it. Just kind of let it sit in the back of my mind and, just moved forward. Fast forward to 2018, April of 2018, I called one of my aunts, the aunt that I'm closest to, because by this time, both of my parents were deceased. So I couldn't go back to my parents to ask them. So I go to my aunt and I ask her, is it true? Am I adopted? And she said, yes, it's true. And that just kind of snowballed into me getting a lot of information quickly. So similar to Samantha, I hit the Googles. How do I get my original birth certificate? Because what happens when you are placed for adoption, you have your original birth certificate, and then they create what they call an amended birth certificate. So then you get a new birth certificate that pretty much has all of your same information, except it has the name of your new parents. And so I Google, I get the original, I see my birth mother's name, where she lived at the time, how old she was. I have all this information. And there was a form that came with it, a health questionnaire. And so if you fill out the health questionnaire, if there is somebody else in the system, you will get their health information back as well. And so I sent off for that. About 2 weeks later, I got a letter back saying that they had found a biological relative. They gave me the first and last name of a woman who lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. At the time, didn't even know that Black people lived in Pittsburgh. Wasn't really sure where Pittsburgh was on the map. I have learned a lot since then, but immediately I went back to Google to see if I could find this person. Could not find this person's name on the internet, not Facebook, not Instagram, no digital footprint whatsoever. And so I said, okay, this person is going to get my health information as well. If she tries to Google my name, I'm easy to find. You can find Sandria Washington.
You
everywhere. And so that is eventually what happened. Maybe about 3 weeks after that, the woman turned out to be my youngest biological sister. She tracked me down via Facebook. We talked on the phone that weekend. And then a week later, I was in Pittsburgh meeting her for the first time. And from there, it just kind of mushroomed out to this journey of meeting more sisters. I'm actually one of 5 girls, all born to the same mother and father. Eventually met my birth mother, birth father, and yes, it's been a whole thing ever since.
Wow. Wowzers. Okay, that is just
Yeah.
crazy.
And that's the short version.
Right,
We gave y'all the short versions of all of that.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes.
Now, Samantha, your mother was sitting across from you, and obviously she knew that you've met these people and stuff. So how did your mother take all that?
One thing I will say about my mother, she has been extremely supportive. She has definitely been there with me as I've gone through the search, as I've gone through the emotions of looking at people face to
Mhm.
face,
Yeah.
gone through the emotions of even feeling like, yes, I'm happy to meet you. Yes, I'm happy to be a part of the family, but really, I don't feel like being bothered today. Like there's all these different emotions that come along with that process. And she's been nothing but supportive. And she has also stood up as my mama because that's what she is,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So, for me, she'll be like, all right, Samantha, you're doing too much. You're pushing yourself, like you have an opportunity to step back. You don't have to do, X, Y, Z, and I don't think that's been from a place of what some might feel like a competition between like adoptive parents and biological parents. It's never been that. It's really always been in my best interest to move how I want to move, and she will support me the entire way, no matter how I choose. So
That's
it's
wonderful.
been great.
That's wonderful. Now, were your birth parents also in Chicago?
No.
Okay.
So they actually reside in Texas, but the
Oh, okay.
majority of my family lives here in Chicago. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
how I was able to
Meet everyone.
connect,
Okay.
with so many people. Mhm.
Wow.
Yep.
That is something. So I remember when Sandria posted the first thing, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I go, "This
Look,
girl
we
looks
had the same
exactly like
reaction.
Sandria."
It's so that
I was like,
memory,
"She looks exactly like that. Has to
exactly.
be her sister because she really looks like Sandria." I go, "Oh my goodness!"
And it's crazy because that was actually 4 years ago to this date. So I just reposted it on Facebook because it came up in my memories. And I remember the night I posted that picture
Yep, it was a
because
night.
I had talked about being adopted. So once all of this stuff was unfolding, like I was very vocal, telling everybody, but I never, like once I met my sister, I never shared pictures. So this was the first time I put something online, and I didn't even put any context with it. I
No,
just
you
put
didn't.
a basic caption, didn't say who she was, because I'm like, if y'all look at it, you can figure it out.
Right.
And yeah, we almost broke the internet because y'all were just like, who is this with your whole face?
Right.
Like, who is this?
But all y'all look alike though.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you all look alike. It's crazy.
And it's crazy because, yeah, literally went 38 years without meeting these people, without knowing they existed. And had I seen them on the street, I know I would have stopped them.
Right. Because
I know I would have stopped them.
because y'all look that much
Yeah.
alike.
I would have been like, let's take a selfie. Let's
Right.
do that. Like, who are you? Can we be friends? Because we look way too much alike. But that's, again, everything kind of like in divine timing. Like
Right.
it was supposed to happen in the time that it happened. And Samantha and I were supposed to connect and
Right.
do the things. But
Yeah.
yeah.
But I thought I was like, well, because I know your brother was so much older than you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, this gives her some people because now, since your mom had died, because I remember the
Right.
day that your mother died, I was at home
Mm-hmm.
for some holiday something. So
Yep.
I
It
was
was
in
right after
Michigan.
Christmas. Yep.
See, I was in Michigan and I go, oh my God, I have to reach out to Sandria. Oh my God. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I think I even called you, and I don't usually call people when folks die, but I was like, I have to call her. I was like, oh my God. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I brought my friend, da da da.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I remember, you going through everything with your mom, and I was just like, what in the, I said, she's by herself. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I can't imagine. Because your brother you don't live in the state, right?
No, so
Right.
he's in Minnesota. So
Right.
that's the
Exactly.
thing. Like when people think about, is there a right time to tell somebody? And of course, there's various opinions. Do you tell them when they're young? Do you tell them when they're older? But I think one of the things for me is that when you tell them, make sure the person isn't alone. Because I
Right. You gotta have a
literally
support system. You
got
ain't
the
nobody.
information alone, and you could do anything to yourself because it's literally like a shock. It's a shock to your system. So I think it's important, like, in Samantha's situation, like her mom, sat her down, they had a conversation, they did it over food, which for me makes everything just a little bit better, but it's like she's getting that information. And if she had wanted to break down or have some type of reaction, somebody would have been there for that. So I would just want people to be mindful, like, You may not want to
Anytime,
slide in the
any kind of
DMs or
news, you need people to be with some any kind of news
yeah,
that is. I wouldn't call that bad news, but you know what I mean. Any kind of life
life
changing.
altering.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Sandra, did you ask your cousin why she decided to DM you that on IG? Because when I tell people
I
the story, they're like, "You're lying." I go, "No, I promise you. She told me the lady sent her a DM."
facts. So I did eventually ask her. I didn't do it right away. So when I read her
I remember that.
message, didn't even respond, didn't
Right.
do nothing. So this was maybe like a year or two ago. She sent me another DM. And that kind of opened up the door to have an in-depth conversation. And I asked her, I was like, why did you do it this way when we were literally sitting together at Thanksgiving?
On Thanksgiving.
We were in the same place at the same time. Why did you decide to do it that way? And the
We could
way
have stepped outside and had a conversation.
could have stepped outside, could have brought my aunt in, like any number of scenarios. But the way she put it to me was that, because basically no one was ever supposed to tell me. Like that was the thing. Like nobody was gonna tell me. So she was going against the grain already, saying something. And at that moment when we were together at Thanksgiving, she said she just got tired. Like she got tired of people not saying anything. So and so just in her frustration of that, and just like rip the Band-Aid off, as Samantha said, like she just wanted to say something and finally put it out there. And I get it. I can definitely get it.
Because in my head, I'm just like, who in the hell does that?
Yeah, but that was the main question.
To say, by the way, your mom died. Like, no.
Yeah, But that was the question I had. Like, why like this? But after she explained it, it definitely made more sense.
Yeah, that is crazy. So, I think that, and we all have interesting families because we Black, and that's just what happens. But but I think that as more and more people are more vocal like you guys, it is helping, because I'm on the school of thought is you need to tell people as early as possible. Even when they don't understand, you explain to them, and then as they get older, it's not so strange. Case in point, which is something totally weird and crazy, but my analogy is my whole food allergies. There's groups I'm in and the parents didn't tell the children they're allergic. And I'm like, but it seems to me like that might be some information
they might want to know if they have a life-threatening allergic reaction.
And, because you don't want them to be different. No, tell them now. Tell them
because they're already different.
And we're all different, though. I mean, that's my whole thing is we're all different. And so if you keep telling people as they're younger, they'll just, that'll just be, they grow up and they know it, and it really won't be a big deal. And most kids, if it's not a big deal to them, then that doesn't give the bully anything to bully you about, because it ain't a big deal to me. You know what I'm saying?
And we've definitely heard that scenario just in people that we've interviewed for the podcast. Like people who grew up knowing, like nobody could use that against them because this is already something that they know, they're getting comfortable with. So
it's the secrets that it's like, and then I know Sandria talks about this a lot. The other big thing is, for health reasons, it is so important to understand your health history. And if you don't know the health history of wherever you came from, it is so important, because it can help the doctors tremendously, can save you some time and grief, usually, some tests even possibly, get you to a faster diagnosis if they know. But it's so important for us to know our health history. And shoot, there's people that ain't adopted that don't know their health history.
And that's the thing. I'm like, well, if health history wasn't important, they would not ask you for it every single time you fill out.
It's called a history and physical. And literally, every time you go to the doctor, the H&P, that's what they do. Yeah. So it is very important. And so, like I said, even people who aren't adopted, unfortunately, don't necessarily have the discussions with the elders to find out, well, what happened to Grandpa? He just disappeared one day. No one.
And unfortunately, that's what happens in a lot of our families.
Exactly.
Like, we don't know why Big Mama passed away. We
Right.
don't know why Uncle so and so stopped coming around. Like,
Right.
people will have ailments, they will have issues, and only a select few people
Well, no.
might know, but we just don't talk about
And
things.
people don't realize some of these things, one, are hereditary, but forget about the fact they're hereditary. You could end up having it, and you need to start testing. Like prostate cancer, colon cancer, you need to test 10 years before
Mm,
your first degree relative was diagnosed. So
mm,
if your mother had colon cancer at 40, then at 30, you need to start having colonoscopies. If your
mhm.
dad had prostate cancer at 35, well, then at 25, you need to start having your prostate check. So, but you have to know these things in
You
order
have to
to.
know, yeah.
And there's something very like empowering about knowing that information as well.
Mhm.
When I went and had my first mammogram at 40, it did come back abnormal.
Mm,
And by that point, though, I already knew that breast cancer had run on my biological family side. I knew that my sisters had had, issues with their breast. I personally had not had anything until this particular
Mhm.
um, this particular mammogram. And then, like, even as of recent, an aunt of mine contacted me to let me know that she had breast cancer, and she felt that
mm.
it was just necessary for me to know. So it's one of those things too, that even though I'm finding it out later in the game, to your point, it's like it's not as jarring, right? It's like,
Right.
Right.
okay, I know that this is a possibility,
Right.
for me. Even with simple things such as hypertension, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I thought that it was strictly from the birth of my child, because I had my second child. It was a rough pregnancy, and it was the
Gotcha.
first time that my blood pressure was elevated in that way. But then again, like, knowing the history, it's like, oh, blood pressure is a thing that runs through this, family or what have you. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that there aren't things that I can't do to
Right.
mitigate that a little bit better. But yeah, it helps to know that information and not just be able to say, like, oh, hypertension, diabetes, like that's
Mhm.
just what happens to Black people.
Right.
Right.
That's not true, but it feels like those two particular diseases are the ones that were just like, oh, well, you will have one or both of them,
Right.
at some point, which might be the case, but it is something different to know precisely where it came from.
Right. Exactly. So
Mm.
that's the other reason why it's important to kind of know. And I mean, thankfully, I think you two young ladies, because we're all young ladies,
Yes.
you two young ladies handled this very well. But not everybody would handle something like that at 38 and 26 well.
Well is relative, I
Well,
think,
like I said,
because there's
we're
periods, there's
yeah,
there's a grieving cycle, there's
yeah,
various emotions at different points, but yeah, well, overall, all things considered.
right, exactly,
Yeah,
All
and
things considered.
right,
yeah,
I think people don't also understand that this is a lifelong process.
hmm,
So it's like,
yeah.
even when, like, Sandria tells her story, I realize, like, how still, like, fresh it is for her. Whereas for
Mhm.
me, I'm like, this is at least 15 years, at this point. So it takes me to a place of like, how has this impacted me
Mhm.
over these 15 years? And it doesn't look like it's necessarily like externally catastrophic,
hmm,
right? But it has definitely impacted the manner by which I live, move, make decisions, or what have you, that have may not always been the best, right? But it may not necessarily be visible. That doesn't mean that it has not been difficult
hmm,
Mhm.
the entire time, and at each stage of a process, so like getting a birth certificate, right? Like, that's a whole other ball of wax. So it's almost like at each of these moments, it brings up
Yeah.
additional emotions that you have to sift through, that you have to deal with. I recently got a hold of, like, all of my adoption paperwork, and so, like, seeing, like,
Mm.
my mother, the receipts, if you will, for payments, and that sort of thing, like, that make you feel a kind of way, like, you
Mm.
know um even like having information about my birth mother, and, I mean, I wasn't too small of a baby, but in comparison to my siblings, I'm over here like, see, I ain't have no prenatal, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm walking around here with
Frail.
someone who's trying to hide me.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm still thriving. I'm still strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know.
But each one of these milestones, it's a lifelong journey. It doesn't stop with, oh, you met your siblings or your family.
Yeah.
That might be where it all begins for you.
Right.
It just depends, on the person and how they're navigating their journey.
Yeah, and I know that both of you, like myself, believe in working on your mental health and making sure
Yes.
that you employ the right people to sit down, or whatever it is, might be Zoom or a phone call these days, whatever it is, to make certain that you are talking to somebody that can be that objective opinion or whatever, and bounce things off of, and make sure that you give you some tools, as my girl, our forever Flotus always talks about her tools. Give you your tools.
Yes, you got to have tools. And that's one of the things I think, why we even started Black to the Beginning in the first place, because in terms of tools, like there wasn't information out there. Like when you get this information that changes your life, there is no rule book. There was no Facebook community that specifically talked about Black people adopted into Black families. We were kind of like these unicorns because we weren't Black people adopted into white families. And so it's like you get this news and you just don't have a place to land. But I think thankfully, based on both of our backgrounds, like Samantha's background, professional leadership, personal development, having those types of tools, having tools like yoga, meditation, like all these different things that we've picked up along the way, I think helped make the landing a little bit softer. But it's like, if you don't have those tools in your toolbox, like what do you do when you get catastrophic information? Like there's nothing there for you. So I think we try to create something, and we're still in the process of creating it, but the podcast is a piece of that. Like, how do you give people a platform to either talk about what they've experienced or allow them to listen to the stories of other people, and they can relate and learn from those stories.
Yeah. And even with that too, Sandria, the platform that we have created as well is not just for those who have been like directly impacted by adoption. And so like for anyone viewing this or listening to this is an opportunity for you to listen to some of those episodes. If nothing more, to be able to build your empathy and compassion for human beings, period, that go through various challenges, within their lives and feel like they're by themselves, don't have support, don't have tools. And a lot of the stories that are on our podcast, you do see these people continue to thrive, right? So none of them are out here necessarily struggling, but it doesn't mean that they have not had a struggle, right? To get to where it is that they're at now. But even in that, we want to create a community where Black people, Black families can come together and have conversations. And again, this is Thanksgiving time. This is when you are in the midst of all of your family members. There's no reason to, not pull somebody outside, have a conversation that you've been wanting, to have. It doesn't have to be this deep, right? Right. Like you're adopted, but just like getting into the intentional practice of having challenging conversations to build that transparency and that honesty, to create the space where it's like, I can come to you, you can come to me. And in the event that we really go through something, I know that you have my back. This is not just family for the sake of, being family or the fact that we're blood or what have you. Family is definitely what you create, and you can create a space for conversation and community, for trust, and to help build up, your family to a place of strength and leaving true legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So Black to Beginning. One, I listen to my podcast on Apple. Are you on all the podcast networks?
We are pretty much the major ones. So
Okay.
Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Pandora,
Okay.
Audible,
Give them
all
the
the things. Yes, all the things. We are
Awesome.
there.
And so next
We are
year,
there.
I'm gonna say that you guys got NAACP image award because you're gonna do
Woo!
it. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you're gonna do that.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
yes, but so you guys celebrated a year.
2 years.
2 years, I'm sorry.
2 years. Yes.
And had a big shindig. And I missed it. But
it was nice. It was
I know
nice.
it
You
was.
missed the charcuterie spread. It was fabulous.
I'm sure it was. So what are you guys looking to do in the next 2 years?
Ooh.
I know y'all got merch. You know, you really getting the word out there.
Yeah. So it's layered for sure. Part of it is making sure that the messaging is impactful and correct, and that Black families understand that what we're doing isn't just about what people think traditionally is adoption. So like we often use the phrase Black adoption experiences. Like that's very deliberate, it's very specific, because we know as Black people that adoption doesn't have to look like the way I'm adopted or the way Samantha is adopted. There are other experiences.
Some family member died, and
right.
So
your cousin is raising you, your grandmother is raising people, or you find out that the man who raised you is not your biological father, or you're a young man who later learns that you have children out there that you didn't know about. Like all of those stories are part of these Black adoption experiences stories. So a lot of the work is just bringing people into the conversation, helping them make the connections. And then in that work, of course, continuing the podcast. So we'll be recording for season 4 at the top of 2023. Launching a new website with all the nice whistles and bells, and you can listen to the podcast from the website. Hoping to make some money, hoping to monetize. Can we get some grants? We are looking at those opportunities, creating curriculums.
Now, are you guys on YouTube?
So we're on YouTube. That's another thing. We'll probably be adding more content to YouTube as well. But yeah, creating the curriculums, content. Yeah, definitely heavy on the content. Like there wasn't a book that we could turn to. So what does it look like if we create that book? What does it look like if we create children's books? What does it look like if we create journals? All these different things. So I think just trying to expand the platform.
And I think underneath all of those things, that our message is really about moving to a space of healing and empowerment. Because I think initially when you hear about somebody being adopted, whether it's formally or whether it's something going on with the family, it's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, for you. As adoptees, you can also take that energy on. I certainly did, right? And no one even imposed it on me, but it was just like, oh my God, like, why is this, a thing in my life? And it's like, once you deal with that, we can't stay there in that place. It's necessary for us to move forward in life. And there's just a ton of issues that come along with being adopted. And when I say a ton of issues, they're not issues that people that are non-adopted don't experience. We experience all the same issues. They're just amplified a touch with being adopted. And so part of our work too is really getting people to a place where it's like, okay, this is a thing. That's fine. How do we move past these particular challenges and live the lives that we're destined to live? period, because this is a part of our story. We were, I'm going to say the universe, God chose us to experience this particular aspect of our story. And we are not going to sit in a place of it's dismal, it's something to be ashamed about, it's, we're less than.
No.
We're more than.
No.
And we're going to intentionally work on living in that truth.
Now, since you have children, how does that work with your children and the birth grandparents and your mother? And
Yeah. So to me, it's very simple. I don't know how other folks do it, but you have grandparents. They're the ones that raised me. Those are your grandparents. Now, as it relates to like the other grandparents, we do a nickname when it comes to them. But it's like I don't ever want my children, or even my mother for that fact, to feel like for some reason like you're not their grandparent. It's like my mother was there at the birth of both my children, so nothing trumps her.
Right.
Period. And I think that's just extremely important. But also another thing for people to understand, like this doesn't just impact the adoptee. It impacts their children, their spouses, their friends. Like it's
everybody
out to everyone.
Yeah. Definitely. Wowzers. But I think that we always we all watch the talk shows and they have the reunion, and you'll never hear about the after the reunion.
Man, because that would take more than a segment. That would take a whole series. Like you would have to follow that family.
Well, I've already told Miss Washington that she need to write her book, and I don't know how in the high heavens me and my non-writing behind wrote 2 books before her.
We got to catch up.
I mean, yes, one is a children's book, but the fact that I wrote a book before Sandria don't make no sense, because let me tell you, just like I don't speak English, writing it was very difficult for me as well. So she was my editor, so she knows good and harm. She knows.
But you made it happen.
I did, but I'm like, Sandria need to write it. But Dr. Sam, it sounds like you need to do the same and get pen to paper. Yeah. Look, it could be on the big screen one day. Like,
that's another thing, a documentary for sure. All those things are coming. I feel like,
timing.
Yeah.
I'm like, after the dissertation, I was done, child. But now
no, that's why I give you your kudos, because as a medical doctor, as yes, we have lives in our hands and all that stuff, but I feel like medical degrees just ain't as hard. I mean, sorry to my fellow doctors, but I'm sorry that
as you say this on Black Doctor.
Writing that dissertation, that is why Renee Joyce doesn't have a master's or a PhD, because I was like, what? For how many pages? Oh no. So kudos to you. You're right, I get it. But you know what? That's why you have Sandria to be your ghostwriter.
Listen, I gotta write my own stuff.
I know.
Lord, it's a process, but I'm excited to see it unfold. Like the stories are there, the content is there. Yep. Like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think, and I know, not even think, I know, just like your podcast, I know that it'll be helpful to so many people.
Yes.
Yeah, I know that. Because like we said, in our community, there's a whole lot of big mamas taking care of the neighborhood kids because of whatever happened. And, there's lots of stories like that in our community. Yeah. And, like you said, it may not be anything on paper, but the child slept at your house and, ate your mama's food every day.
Every day. They live there.
That was my brother. What do you mean?
Right. And it's okay to talk about those stories.
Exactly.
We want, like, even the ones that are hard, that are challenging, where there's a root of something that might be traumatic for somebody. It's okay to air the dirty laundry, or,
Look at our boy Bernie Mac. May he rest in peace. Remember, he took care of it was his nieces and nephews.
So funny story about that, because we actually had his daughter Janice. She did something for Black Doctor, but she said that was not a true story. That was a bit. That was the show, the
But that
sitcom.
bit was like the longest bit of our lives.
Yeah, she said that was not true. She said she is the only child. She did not grow up in a home with these other people. Not true. Not true.
My milk and cookies, that wasn't true?
Nope. And she just put that on Instagram maybe like a month ago. So
Okay,
yeah,
I didn't see
everybody
that.
was
That's funny.
shocked.
But what is the
but
true
to
story
that-
is Roland Martin, he did take care of his, I want to say it was a sister's kids.
So many
That is the truth.
people.
Yeah.
Patty
And he talked
LaBelle,
about that.
Nelly,
Yes, Patty
after
LaBelle,
his
yes.
sister passed.
Nelly,
Like,
yes.
it's prevalent everywhere. And yeah, it's okay to talk about it. Like, it doesn't have to be celebrities. Like, we can talk about it too.
Mhm.
And then if it's hard, how do we get past that? Like, don't just let the secrets or the unsaid fester and then come out in somebody's DMs, you know?
Yeah. And can we also talk about the fact that just because the child grew up with family does not make that situation any better?
Mhm.
I think a lot of times what gets missed is that it can be, and Sandria and I have talked about this. I said, I don't know what's worse. Finding out at 26 that I'm adopted, or being in my blood family still and having my actual parent be walking in and around me, and I don't know. But I'm looking at this person because I'm being told that's my aunt or that's whomever, right? And then when they find out this information, or even if it's a situation where the parent is just around, right, and the child knows that they're being raised by the grandparents, like that's a thing. And to think that the child is not impacted by that. So it's like, why is my parent leaving out the door and I'm still staying here with you? I want to be with my parent as well. And so there's a whole host of issues that come along with kinship adoption. And it's like, we have to be open to having that conversation that, just because you were raised by grandparents or you were raised in love, that there's nothing else to worry about with that child. That's just not true. And so there's a whole lot of issues that are rising up with people, taking them to therapy because we're not willing to have a conversation about the dynamics within our families.
That's real.
Right. Yeah. And that's why we need to make mental health, make it a priority. And also just, it's not that big of a deal. It's not an issue. It's just like you take care of your physical health, you need to take care of your mental health.
But stigma is on the same way stigma is on adoption. Stigma is still on mental health. It's gotten better, but
we still have a ways to go.
Yeah. It's like everybody needs somebody to talk to. And it's okay. It is okay. Shout out to Black therapists. We need you. We love you. We need more Black therapists,
psychologists, the ones in the school, the social workers.
Ones that are adoption trained, adoption trauma trained. Like, we need you on the front lines, because let me tell you, 'tis the season for all of these ancestry kits. They go on sale and people take these tests and find out they have brothers and sisters. They have opened a whole Pandora's box. And 30 years ago, 40 years ago, nobody was thinking about that. But now we are in a present age where a lot of people's lives are being affected and impacted because of these DNA tests, and there's nobody to support them. So yes, we need Black therapists, because Black people tend to feel more comfortable speaking to another Black person. So
I agree.
We need y'all.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you, ladies. Everyone, please make sure that wherever you listen to podcasts, you go listen to their podcast, visit their website, and just follow them on this journey, because I'm telling you, you will learn something. And I promise you, you know someone, in case you think you don't, you know somebody that you just never knew. Or maybe they didn't know either.
They didn't know it.
But you know somebody that was adopted in any way, shape, or form. Like she said, I've learned so many different terms today. But kinship adoption, which I like that. And then what was it? What was it?
The
Late
discovery.
discovery.
Late discovery.
Mhm.
Yeah, see, all these terms I'm learning. But yeah, you
Yeah.
guys, please, please, please share the broadcast and make sure you listen to their podcast. They've got 3 seasons down. 4th one starts in January. Follow these amazing ladies. I'm telling you, it will be a treat to you. I promise you. And thank you, ladies. Black to the
Thank
beginning
you.
on
Thank
everything,
you.
right?
Yes, yes. Black to the Beginning, Instagram, Facebook, Black Adoption Podcast.
Yep. So please, please follow them. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next time here on Black Doctor. Thank you, ladies, for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
I greatly
you.
appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your stories.
Absolutely.
And
Anytime.
and I will see you guys next time.
All right.
Bye.